1 Nephi chapter 8. In this chapter, Lehi shares that he had a vision of what he calls the tree of life. As we read through this chapter, we'll learn more about the symbolism of everything in the vision, but for now, the tree is ultimately a representation of our relationship with Christ. The vision also shows how we can approach that tree and what obstacles are in our way that prevent us from being close to Christ. Now, after taking one verse to talk about seeds that they gathered for planting in agriculture, Nephi then shares his perspective of his father's telling of this vision. Starting in verse 1. And it came to pass that we had gathered together all manner of seeds of every kind, both of grain of every kind, and also of the seeds of fruit of every kind. And it came to pass that while my father tarried in the wilderness, he spake unto us, saying, Behold, I have dreamed a dream, or, in other words, I have seen a vision. And behold, because of the thing which I have seen, I have reason to rejoice in the Lord because of Nephi, and also of Sam. For I have reason to suppose that they, and also many of their seed, will be saved. But behold, Laman and Lemuel, I fear exceedingly because of you. For behold, methought I saw in my dream a dark and dreary wilderness. And it came to pass that I saw a man, and he was dressed in a white robe. And he came and stood before me. And it came to pass that he spake unto me, and bade me follow him. And it came to pass that as I followed him, I beheld myself that I was in a dark and dreary waste. And after I had travelled for the space of many hours in darkness, I began to pray unto the Lord that he would have mercy on me, according to the multitude of his tender mercies. And it came to pass that after I had prayed unto the Lord, I beheld a large and spacious field. And it came to pass that I beheld a tree, whose fruit was desirable to make one happy. And it came to pass that I did go forth and partake of the fruit thereof. And I beheld that it was most sweet, above all that I ever before tasted. Yea, and I beheld that the fruit thereof was white, to exceed all the whiteness that I had ever seen. And as I partook of the fruit thereof, it filled my soul with exceedingly great joy. Wherefore I began to be desirous that my family should partake of it also, for I knew that it was desirable above all other fruit. And as I cast my eyes round about, that perhaps I might discover my family also, I beheld a river of water, and it ran along, and it was near the tree of which I was partaking the fruit. And I looked to behold from whence it came, and I saw the head thereof a little way off, and at the end thereof I beheld your mother Sariah, and Sam, and Nephi, and they stood as if they knew not whither they should go. And it came to pass that I beckoned unto them, and I also did say unto them with a loud voice, that they should come unto me, and partake of the fruit, which was desirable above all other fruit. And it came to pass that they did come unto me, and partake of the fruit also. And it came to pass that I was desirous that Laman and Lemuel should come and partake of the fruit also. Wherefore I cast mine eyes towards the head of the river, that perhaps I might see them. And it came to pass that I saw them, but they would not come unto me and partake of the fruit. So Lehi is giving us details about his vision. In the beginning, he sees himself in a lot of darkness, and he's not able to find his way. But after praying, he is then led to the tree of life. And after partaking of the fruit, he finds that the fruit is the most precious thing and that it is the most desirable. It's very tasty, and its whiteness is above all other whiteness. So naturally, because this fruit is so delicious, Lehi wants to share it with his family. And this is why he was happy about Nephi and Sam, because as he calls out to them, they follow Lehi's directions, and they come to the tree of life also and partake. But unfortunately, when Lehi sees Laman and Lemuel and does the same for them and asks them to come partake of the fruit, Laman and Lemuel, they decide not to, they stay where they are. Lehi, I'm sure, has seen the writing on the wall for a while that Laman and Lemuel are not necessarily going to be as faithful as Nephi, but to see it in such a powerful vision, that must be heart-wrenching. Now, of course, Lehi does not give up on Laman and Lemuel. He never does that. But this will be the fate of Laman and Lemuel if they do not repent and start doing what they need to be doing. If they want a relationship with Christ, that is. And ultimately, this is what this is a symbol of. Laman and Lemuel have no interest in God or his son, Jesus Christ. Now, after Lehi describes the state of his family in this vision, he now goes on to talk about all the other people that he sees, starting in verse 19. And I beheld a rod of iron,
and it extended along the bank of the river, and led to the tree by which I stood. And I also beheld a straight and narrow path, which came along by the rod of iron, even to the tree by which I stood. And I also beheld a straight and narrow path, which came along by the rod of iron, even to the tree by which I stood. And it also led by the head of the fountain unto a large and spacious field, as if it had been a world. And I saw numberless concourses of people, many of whom were pressing forward, that they might obtain the path which led unto the tree by which I stood. And it came to pass that they did come forth, and commence in the path which led to the tree. And it came to pass that there arose a mist of darkness, yea, even an exceedingly great mist of darkness, insomuch that they who had commenced in the path did lose their way, that they wandered off and were lost. And it came to pass that I beheld others pressing forward, and they came forth and caught hold of the end of the rod of iron, and they did press forward through the mist of darkness, clinging to the rod of iron, even until they did come forth and partake of the fruit of the tree.
So Lehi sees that there's a big group of people that come forward and grab the rod of iron, and the rod of iron is leading these people to the tree of life, or in other words, these people are attempting to establish a strong relationship with God, and every time they take a step holding on to the rod of iron, that relationship is strengthened. And then when you arrive to the tree, that is when you are able to partake of the fruit and receive the benefits of that relationship. Now, the rod of iron is very important here because there's a mist of darkness. And if the people are not holding on to the rod of iron, they will lose their way, which is why we read in verse 24 that they were clinging to the rod of iron. So now that we've seen the people who have attempted to follow Christ by holding on to the rod of iron, we now go to other people who have no such intentions, or in other words, the people of the world. And unfortunately, they do some dirty work and make it very difficult for the people who are holding on to the rod to make their way. And this is starting in verse 25.
And after they had partaken of the fruit of the tree, they did cast their eyes about as if they were ashamed. And I also cast my eyes round about, and beheld on the other side of the river of water a great and spacious building, and it stood as it were in the air, high above the earth, and it was filled with people, both old and young, both male and female, and their manner of dress was exceedingly fine, and they were in the attitude of mocking and pointing their fingers towards those who had come at and were partaking of the fruit. And after they had tasted of the fruit, they were ashamed because of those that were scoffing at them, and they fell away into forbidden paths and were lost.
And now I, Nephi, do not speak all the words of my father, but to be short in writing, behold, he saw other multitudes pressing forward, and they came and caught hold of the end of the rod of iron, and they did press their way forward, continually holding fast to the rod of iron, until they came forth and fell down and partook of the fruit of the tree. And he also saw other multitudes feeling their way towards that great and spacious building. And it came to pass that many were drowned in the depths of the fountain, and many were lost from his view, wandering in strange roads. And great was the multitude that did enter into that strange building. And after they did enter into that building, they did point the finger of scorn at me, and those that were partaking of the fruit also, but we heeded them not. These are the words of my father.
For as many as heeded them had fallen away, and Laman and Lemuel partook not of the fruit,
said my father. And it came to pass after my father had spoken all the words of his dream or vision, which were many, he said unto us, because of these things which he saw in a vision, he exceedingly feared for Laman and Lemuel. Yea, he feared lest they should be cast off from the presence of the Lord. And he did exhort them then with all the feeling of a tender parent, that they would hearken to his words, that perhaps the Lord would be merciful to them, and not cast them off. Yea, my father did preach unto them. And after he had preached unto them, and also prophesied unto them of many things, he bade them to keep the commandments of the Lord, and he did cease speaking unto them. So at the end of the vision, Lehi sees that there's a great and spacious building, and it is filled with all kinds of people. Now, the way that they're dressed and their attitude, and the fact that the great and spacious building is in the air, shows that it is the pride of the world. And these people, in their pride, are mocking those that are following the path of God and approaching the tree of life. And unfortunately, those who listen and pay attention to the mocking words of those in the great and spacious building, they fall away even after partaking of the fruit. After feeling the love of God, they are ashamed and are tricked by the ways of the world into forsaking their relationship with God. We also receive a kind of terrifying image of the river that many were drowned in the depths of the fountain. That's in verse 32. And Lehi also talks in general about how there's a lot of people that aren't really in any of these paths. They're not following the rod of iron, they're not drowning in the rivers, and they're not even in the great and spacious building, but they're just wandering and are lost. If we call ourselves disciples, we know which path we are on. If we want to follow Christ and strengthen our relationship with Him, we need to cling to the rod of iron. We need to be steadfast through the mists of darkness, and we need to ignore the haughtiness and the mockery of the world. Now, I'm not going to go into all the symbolism of the things that are in this vision, because Nephi actually gets his own personal explanation of what each thing represents in just a few chapters here later in 1 Nephi. But after the vision ends, he is very concerned for his two sons, Laman and Lemuel. So after the vision, Lehi spends a good amount of time trying to talk to them and teach them and help them understand the importance of following the Lord. And I love in verse 37 that it says, "And he did exhort them with all the feeling of a tender parent." Now, there are a lot of things in this vision that we can break down, but I actually believe the most important thing out of this whole vision, verse 34, "These are the words of my father, for as many as heeded them had fallen away." Now, this is referring to those in the great and spacious building. What Lehi is saying here is all the people that paid attention and felt ashamed because of what the people in the great and spacious building were saying, they disregarded the fruit and walked away into dark and forbidden paths. Now, I have seen this personally in my own life. I have seen people who have dedicated themselves to Christ only to fall away because they paid attention to the world more than they did Christ. And of course, they have the freedom to choose. But if we truly want to follow Christ, we will not allow people who do not know who Christ is and do not care about Him and will mock us for our faith dictate whether we are close to Christ or not. We should not let those of the world persuade us to join them when we have tasted of the sweet fruit that comes from being close to Christ and being His disciple. We need to be like Lehi and the faithful part of his family in verse 33, where it says, "We heeded them not." We need not concern ourselves with the opinions of the world when it comes to Christ.